Are there people that are born evil, that are wicked, so to say, right from the start? We hear stories sometimes, especially in concerning crime and such, of individuals that from the very beginning were very troublesome and showed signs of great proclivity towards criminality, towards quote unquote psychopathy and or sociopathy. Is that a thing, or is it always a later development? So here it would of course be helpful to clarify some of our notions. For example, good versus evil. We say that the thoughtless notion associated with evil that we may have, such that has it that the evil person strives for nothing, or strives for destruction for its own sake, or strives for negation for its own sake, is not even wrong. It's just incorrect usage of language. It is only possible to strive towards a perceived good, and it's just that we may not see or know the perceived good that another person is striving toward. So, for example, let's say that I'm driving on the road and somebody cuts in front of me, and I honk at them, and maybe worse. From my own perspective, I see what was going on. I strove for a perceived good, such as to reestablish control, such as to vent my anger, such as to project on somebody else. Actually, I probably wouldn't know that if that was the case, but I could know that. From my own perspective, it makes sense. This person wronged me. They suck, and I need to get right. Right? But if somebody then does that to me, even seconds later, I don't see their inner thought process, and it may feel that I may feel, and I may think that they did what they did for quote unquote no reason. I was justified, but they weren't, because they didn't have a good reason. They just did it to do it. That's not sound, obviously. It's just that we don't see the quote unquote reasons why other people do what they do. So each and every person has to strive for perceived good. It's just that that perceived good may end up being very destructive to others and may end up doing a lot of damage. So, with that said, the shoes of a person that is called evil, as judged by his or her outward acts, can be stepped into. And if we were to step into those shoes, speculatively speaking, we would see that based on who I am as that evil person, based on my inward existence, whatever of it that I have, I am striving toward some sort of perceived good. For example, feelings of superiority, feelings of control, feelings of power, feelings of pleasure. It is just that, just quote unquote, excuse me, that being the person that I am, having the inward existence that I do have, my pursuits of the apparent good can result in very destructive and very negative things. So, going deeper, the issue would seem to be precisely that inward existence, precisely who it is that I am. Now, what determines that? In light of what does a person form into who he or she is? We say that a sophisticated view here would be a developmental view. Instead of simply thinking, people are what they are, he is what he is, she is what she is, we see that people develop and form into what they become. Any given person starts out as a sort of psychophysical seed, right? A set of psychological, physical proclivities, natural appetites, inclinations, natural weaknesses, proclivities. And if we didn't mention that, something that I'm more sensitive to, certain things that I do not pick up on, right? Some people physically are born blind, and others are born blind as it concerns empathy or something like this, or born or within the next few years it develops. So I start off life as this psychophysical seed on the sort of animal substratum. And then if I properly develop, I can integrate into a human person from the inside out. And I can transcend to some or another extent my purely animal inward being. I can attain to or experience rational self consciousness. I can develop some sort of intellectual and moral personality. I can kind of pull away from the velocity of that bog, which is that psychophysical, purely psychophysical being. And that's kind of the deal. That's a good deal, should we say. That's kind of the goal. Now, as it concerns those seeds that we start out as, the goal is always to transcend them and to pull away from them. But if I start out in life as, so to say, a flawed seed, right, then there can be additional problems. Meaning a person that is strictly kind of on the psychophysical plane of experience, of inward experience, can be, as it happens, very nice, right, and perfectly functional and fine outwardly. The normal Homo sapien kind of psychophysical state is a pro-social state to some or other extent, at least to some people, is a state where work can be done, where empathy can be felt towards others, and such. That state still needs to be to attain to true personhood, move beyond or outmatured, or however we would phrase it. But it can be that the deck of cards, so to say, that I was dealt, that I start out as, that seed that I start out as, that something is wrong with it. Right? That I have blindnesses, not just physical, but of the self. Again, I cannot feel empathy towards others. I feel extreme levels of aggression. I feel extreme rage and jealousy towards others, even at a very young age. We see that these profiles pop up everywhere, right? At all socioeconomic levels, in all nations, in all places, at very early ages. So to say that unequivocally, and with all kinds of parents, good parents, bad parents, anything in between or otherwise, so to say that unequivocally it's the environment that creates this bad deck of cards would not seem to be correct. There are some starting points of the human condition that are problematic, shall we say, and that have some severe deficiencies. Now, with that said, far as our goal is always to exceed that starting point, it's always to pull away from that kind of pull, gravitational pull of simply our selfish, isolated, alienated animal being, whether that being is nice or not, whether it's pro-social or anti-social, whatever the case might be. The case then is not closed if I start out life with such a bad deck of cards. It's just that extreme care may be needed, right? And truly elevated, we might say professional parenting and upbringing then would be needed in order to have anything adequate develop. Right? The initial, again, series of psychophysical, or should we say this initial psychophysical profile that I start out as, even if it is highly problematic, again, I'm 2 or 3, I fly into extreme rages beyond what is normal, extreme jealousy. I cannot feel empathy for anybody. I torture insects, maybe something like this. That in itself is just nature. It's just, it is what it is. Has not yet been taken up into any sort of integrated personality as influenced by volition, by spontaneity. So that ought not be called evil in and of its own self. It's just a bad deck of cards. So from there, theoretically speaking, if, again, professional, so to speak, parenting assists, and if a particular course, a path is paved for such problematic psychophysical profiles, then they could become normal, perhaps. They could become fine And it could be that when I grow up, I simply recall that when I don't even recall anything maybe, right? It's out of my memory, or I can vaguely, dimly recall that once I had all of those problems. Once I was a real problem child or a problem baby, whatever the case might be. But then my parents, guardians uh, took me under their wing, put me in sports, socialized me, disciplined me, all these things. And now I'm fine. I can be a productive member of society. Maybe I still have some kind of dark side or some quirky side, but it's not the end of the world. However, let that bad deck of cards, that rotten seed to so say, go out in the wild, and it can then become that which we call evil. 15, 20, whatever years later, it can then become, it can grow into an integrated evil personality, such that he is willing to take the lives of innocent people, goodness forbid, be a serial killer, all kinds of things. So that's one kind of interpretation here to take. Obviously, these are very complicated questions. Further, there is the aspect of human freedom to consider, and to consider the several, probably limited opportunities that a person may or may not have in the course of their development to kind of shoot their shot, shall we say, to make their spontaneous contribution to who they become, aside from that initial seed, aside from that initial starting point. If I'm told some kind of truth and I'm made to think, then how I deal with that truth, well, I have to deal with it. Some of my choices before battles are lost. Should I do it? Should I not do it? That's also on me. Also, my general attitude that forms towards any notion of reality above me. That's also on me. It's possible, believe it or not, to have a very problematic, again, psychology, and yet, too, look down on it, to not be happy about it. There are some self aware, quote unquote, psychopaths who say, as it happens constitutionally, I'm incapable of feeling sympathy for others, empathy for others. I can't get myself to step into anybody's shoes. I can't get myself to feel pain for anybody else, but I don't like that. And I don't like myself at all. Please, somebody spare society from me. It's possible. And in that sense, then the psyche would be relative to the person, kind of like the body is relative to the person. Like, I don't have to like my body. I don't have to say my body is great. So ultimately here, the culprit would be pride. Right? In addition to having this bad psychophysical profile, right, this problematic psyche, I'm proud. Right? That's really the evil, arguably. I'm proud. I don't want to look down on it. I don't want to consider its inadequacies. I shy away from any signs of its imperfections. And that consequently crystallizes me into a hardened, so to say, evil or wicked person, right, who had that extremely alienated, antisocial, flawed starting point, and then combined it with pride, combined it with self-idolatry to form something really, really not pretty, to say the very least. So anyhow, those are some thoughts concerning these questions. In summary, until it's too late, it's not too late. Until the end, it's not the end. And certainly every parent and guardian should assume, an educator should assume that with correct upbringing and intervention and education, each and every young person can be brought to a good place, can be brought to the place at least where self-consciousness can develop, and an individual can become more than merely the psychophysical human animal that we all start out giving life as. And that certainly includes anybody that could be called at first glance not good. So we can think about it. Thank you for listening.